Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just dive right in, shall we? If you're a graduate student or an MBA candidate, you already know that facing down a massive research project can feel, frankly, pretty terrifying. You're probably staring at pages and pages of strict academic guidelines thinking it's just endless bureaucratic red tape. But today, we're going to flip that script. We're going to look at those guidelines not as red tape, but as your architectural blueprint for success. We're going to break down exactly what goes into a quantitative dissertation, pulling from actual university briefings and top-tier management research frameworks to show you how to build a rock-solid, academically rigorous paper.
So, it's the million-dollar question, right? What exactly goes into a successful quantitative dissertation? Look, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of requirements universities throw at you. You've got to balance original theory, complex methodology, intense statistical analysis, and oh yeah, those incredibly specific formatting rules. But here's the secret. Once you realize that every single requirement has a very distinct purpose in telling your research story, the whole thing becomes so much more manageable.
To get us there, we'll be walking through our blueprint today in 5 key steps: mapping your dissertation structure, literature and methodology, presenting quantitative results, formatting and academic presentation, and finally, essential appendices and data.
Section 1. Mapping your dissertation structure.
The absolute most important thing to remember here is that a strong dissertation mimics the flow of a professional journal article. It's chronological. It starts with an abstract, which is a maximum of 1 page summarizing your methods, your findings, and the implications. Then you move into the introduction, giving an overview, your aims, and the academic value of the work. That flows right into the literature review, where you use theory to justify your hypotheses. Next up is methodology, where you justify your approach and tackle ethics. And finally, your results, which is the clear presentation of your statistics. This predictable flow is absolutely crucial. Why? Because it lets your reader, and the person actually grading your paper, easily track your research problem from start to finish.
Let's actually look at how this plays out in the real world. Take this mature empirical paper from the journal Tourism Management. It's called To Rome with Love. This study looks at Roman heritage consumption, and just like your dissertation should, it follows our blueprint perfectly. It stakes out a manageable area of general interest heritage tourism and aims for real depth by exploring the personal connection people feel with a place. By anchoring their research to a very specific context, like this Roman Heritage Festival, the researchers guarantee their topic delivers both theoretical and practical value.
Section 2. Literature and methodology.
Okay, so this section is basically the beating heart of your research design. This is where you have to vigorously defend your choices. If we look at the guidelines from the AMJ Management Research Canvas, the theoretical requirement is crystal clear. You have to justify exactly how you analyze and measure your variables. Now, compare that to our Rome case study. The researchers didn't just vaguely say they were looking at tourism, right? They specifically defined and measured place attachment and event involvement to predict a very specific outcome, which was revisit intention. They clearly justified those chosen variables, beautifully bridging the gap between abstract theoretical requirements and practical application.
The Rome study does a brilliant job illustrating its methodology visually. What you're looking at here is a moderated mediation model. The researchers used this specific visual and statistical model, an SPSS process macro to be exact, to track how experience authenticity moderates the relationship between event involvement and revisit intention. It's basically a super complex quantitative relationship, but it's made totally digestible through a clear model. It maps out exactly how the independent, dependent, and mediating variables interact with each other. But here's the catch. Just presenting a nice graphic, that is not the finish line. The AMJ Canvas emphasizes that you have to explicitly articulate why your data sources and your analytical techniques are the absolute most appropriate choice for your specific research question. Why this survey? Why this exact sample? Why this specific statistical test instead of another one? Your dissertation literally has to answer those why questions to prove your methodological rigor.
Section 3. Presenting quantitative results.
All right, so you've gathered your data, you've run the models, but now you actually have to present them clearly. You have to strike a balance here. On one hand, you need descriptive statistics to show how your data varies, basically what's common and what's less common in the raw numbers. On the other hand, you need inferential statistics, and this is where you're actually drawing conclusions to test your hypotheses. Plus, you have the mandatory use of visual aids. You absolutely must use tables and figures to summarize those major findings efficiently. Now, I want to point out a huge trap that a lot of students fall into. They think the math just speaks for itself. Let me tell you, it doesn't. Your university guidelines explicitly state that you are graded on your ability to use words to draw appropriate conclusions from your results. You have to clearly articulate the implications of those statistics for the exact hypotheses you set up in your introduction. Think of it this way. The numbers are your evidence, for sure, but your prose, that has to tell the story.
Section 4, Formatting and Academic Presentation.
You know, you could have the most groundbreaking data in the world, but if your presentation is sloppy, it completely undermines your work. The key here is adhering to APA conventions, specifically the 7th edition if that's what your institution uses. This is a very strict standard for reporting results. We are talking about highly granular details here. The accurate use of statistical symbols, specific decimal place formatting, and incredibly strict structural guidelines for your key statistical tables. Honestly, it is completely non-negotiable if you want to maintain academic rigor.
And speaking of non-negotiables, you really need to pay attention to your submission mechanics. For example, the guidelines we're looking at highlight a hard final deadline. One properly formatted copy must be uploaded to Minerva no later than Thursday, September 3rd, 2026. Missing this deadline isn't just a minor slip-up. It literally results in an automatic reduction of marks. Imagine doing all that hard work just to get penalized because you missed the administrative cutoff. No way.
Section 5, Essential Appendices and Data.
Okay, we've made it to the final phase. These are the crucial, yet so often overlooked hidden requirements. I'm going to fire through these mandatory appendices quickly, but pay attention, because these are the foundational proof of your transparent research. You need your authorized ethical approval form. You need complete and authorized supervision log entries, an organizational feedback arrangements form, if that's relevant to you, a draft of feedback PowerPoint slides if you promise them, and a copy of your survey or an exemplar transcript. Guys, these are not optional add-ons.
If you think I'm overstating how important these administrative docs are, just look at this stark warning taken straight from the university guidelines. It explicitly states that your dissertation will not be marked if you miss these documents. That is a massive penalty. You could literally write a masterpiece, an absolute game changer of a paper. But if you forget your ethical approval form in the appendix, it won't even be graded.
On top of that, there is an absolute demand for data transparency. A full electronic copy of your raw dataset, like your SPSS or NVivo files, must be sent directly to your supervisor. And it has to be properly password protected or encrypted. Why go through all that trouble? Because it allows your supervisors to verify the absolute integrity of your analysis before any treatments are applied. It proves you did the work honestly and accurately.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a challenge. Take a step back and look at your own work in progress. Ask yourself, does your dissertation provide a transparent, methodologically rigorous story from the very first page of the abstract, all the way down to the final encrypted dataset password? Remember, a quantitative dissertation isn't just a bunch of random hurdles you have to jump over. It's a carefully architected blueprint designed to show off your ability to conduct rigorous professional research. Trust the structure, follow the blueprint, and go nail that submission.